Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by thelines.com. Back together again. It's me coming to you from from Belgium still, on vacation. Nate there on the East Coast. And we are bringing you a Thursday night slate here, Nate. A pretty small one, bunch of back-to-backs as well in the NBA tonight. So we'll be talking about a few things, a few game videos, as well as those player props that we love to bring you each and every weekday. Make sure to like and subscribe so you can continue to follow along with us all regular season and into the playoffs. Also want you to head to thelines.com. That's where we have our great written content for you guys all season long, and our odds finder tool, which you can go ahead and use to shop those lines to the best of your ability across U.S. sportsbooks. Nate, let's go ahead and jump into the lines for tonight and then talk about this first game, Philly and Atlanta.
Yeah, I believe everybody is on a back-to-back. Everybody in the NBA had to play Monday and Wednesday. No games Tuesday. And so we do get a short 4-game slate here after that. So the Mavs minus 3.5 at Wizards is one. That totals all the way down to 208. The game we're looking at here, Sixers right now are plus 1.5 at Atlanta, and that totals at 222. Hornets plus 11 at the Heat, total around 215. And then the other game we'll break down right now, Blazers plus 6.5 at the Pelicans, total of 226. With the Hawks, you always got to talk home road splits first and foremost. It matters for other teams. It matters for them a lot more. And the first thing I look at is just how they get up for games against Eastern Conference contenders. And I was pretty surprised even at how strong of a correlation there is when I go through the game log. They've won 14 of their last 17 at home against the Bucks, Sixers, Celtics, Heat. The premier teams, and you can even throw away 2 of those losses last December during the Omicron variant, where the Hawks were playing with like a skeleton crew. Trey was in for one of those games against the Heat, but they had like no centers. They had, it's just losses to throw out. That includes one of their losses against the Sixers too. And they also then turned around and beat the Sixers with no Trae Young, no starters of any sort. And Embiid and Maxey were out there for the Sixers. I mean, we know this is a different Sixers team now that James Harden's out a month. They're going to showcase their depth. They're going to spread the ball around a little more. Embiid has looked pretty good since coming back from his non-COVID illness here. I mean, Atlanta has some big bodies to throw at him, though. Not your typical monster numbers from Embiid, I guess. The last 5 trips to State Farm, 27 points per game. 53% field goal, only getting 9 free throw attempts. I say only. That's still quite a bit. I mean, the Atlanta defense, much better at home, of course. Their offense also better. They do tend to play faster, but when these teams meet, I don't know if it's the Embiid factor or what, but man, it is slowed down. It's a 96 pace, under in 7 straight meetings. Sixers are getting 103. The Hawks are getting 100. Again, 2 of those most recent meetings were completely affected by COVID, and I guess you can throw that out. But it just hasn't been that high scoring, which is strange because that's how the Hawks tend to play at home. I mean, that's why you get a pretty high total, 222. I mean, if it continues to drop a little bit because of this recent history, I think the over is definitely in play. I mean, the way the Hawks are playing this particular season is conducive to high-scoring games, for sure. But I think for now, I'm going to just stick with the Hawks to win at home and just kind of lean on that. Like last season, they won 13 of their last 14 home games against Eastern Conference teams. Didn't matter if they were contenders or not. They were just rolling at home. They've opened with winning 2 of 3, dropping one against Charlotte, which is a puzzling one. But then they come back and clap Milwaukee. And that's just, to me, if they can actually beat the Bucks, who are playing at an extremely high level, and the Sixers are playing are very inconsistent, very dysfunctional so far early in the season, I definitely lean towards the Hawks winning this game.
All right, you said a lot of stuff. I should have been writing some notes down because I definitely have something for everything that you just said. And I want to clarify, this is a 4-game slate, some weird back-to-backs. So there's a lot of conflicting factors. There's some weirdness to it. I don't feel great about the fact that I lean over. because the conflicting factors here are the Hawks and Sixers, right? And the way that they play. I want to clarify. Are you talking about their when you talk about their recent matchups going under? Were you also referencing their playoff games though, or were you only talking regular season matchups?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. Damn. All right. Because either way, obviously, in the playoffs, you expect a bit lower scoring, right? Especially once you get to the conference finals, like the conference semis, like that game was, or that series was that they played. But yeah, even in the regular season, I mean, the last two alone were the exact same score with just each team winning one of them, right? 98-96. Like you said, you can throw away some of the stuff here. What I'm looking at and what I'm sort of leaning towards and why I lean over is all the stuff that, that I kind of put down in our in some of our notes that we talk about occasionally before the game, where, I'm looking at like the way that they're just different on the road this season than they are at home is Philadelphia, right? And so their road offense is much better, 117 at home or on the road, which is good for second best overall, versus 110 at home, 43% from three on the road this season. I mean, 37% at home, still really good, but I mean, 43% is like Steph Curry as a team, right? Which is pretty crazy. They score 6 more points in the paint per game at home. Obviously a little bit, I do think it's their game is a lot more tailored to playing a bit faster, which they do, getting the ball down low to Embiid, which, even if it takes some time off the clock or it goes slow, when he's getting fouled 10 times a game and getting to the free throw line 10 times a game, rather getting fouled more than that, it stops the clock, right? I mean, it allows for more possessions, at least, as that we know that possession is probably going to come to an end with either a defensive rebound or him hitting a free throw. So I do think there's opportunity in this one for things to turn around a bit in terms of the history of these teams going under so consistently. I do think there's consistently a playoff atmosphere. Trey's a little bit better on the road than he is at home. But look, a bunch more stuff. Not only are they better on offense on the road as Philly, they're also much, like I said, they play faster. Their defense is worse, 22nd overall in terms of their rating on the road versus 10th at home. They allow 4 more fast break points per game playing at that faster pace. They allow 6 more points per game off of turnovers on the road than they do at home. Once again, playing at a little faster pace. They're 4-1 to the over this season on the road versus 1-5 to the over at home this season so far. So a complete reversal there. Embiid on the road versus this team is very, very good. 28.5 points right now is his prop. I want to touch it. Maybe we'll talk about that in the props video. We are still waiting for a few things to come out, but I do like the boards. I fear that it's probably going to be about 11.5 is his prop tonight, and that's about what he averages is 12 a game against this team on the road. I think they're the thing that really makes me want to believe in Philly tonight as well at 1.5 point dogs as we're talking about this. I know we've been talking mostly about the total. I think you feel pretty good about the Hawks and the way that, like you said, they come out and play incredibly well against the top teams in the East. I would bank on that being the case tonight. I just would also bank on Embiid coming out having a big performance, and also sort of an addition by subtraction of James Harden. And it's not that James Harden himself is necessarily detrimental, obviously. It's more just the fact that when Harden's out there, it's a different style of play. It doesn't allow guys like Embiid and Maxey to open up and get to their spots. Those two guys play together incredibly well, Maxey and Embiid, as they don't take away from each other at all. I mean, since last season, when we know what Maxey does when Harden or Embiid are out, right? Just one of them is out and you put Maxey in there, and we're talking about a complete jump in all of his stats across the board offensively, and especially because of the usage. But Embiid over the last 2 seasons, when Harden isn't there, this season and last season, 1 game this season, 47 games last season, we're talking 29.5 points and 11.5 boards a game, 4.5 assists as well, right, for Embiid. So there's a lot of reason to like the way that he and the offense flow when Harden's not out there. To be frank, I'm not saying like this isn't a team that can win with all those guys on the floor. I just think if they're going to continue to play the way they played before Harden went out, where it was just 3-ball, I don't feel as good about that as I do about Harden playing point guard and allowing Maxey and Embiid to cook, which is what they're going to do in this game without Harden.
Yeah, I mean, my bad off the top saying everyone's on a back-to-back. The Sixers have not played since Monday, so they do have a rest advantage here. That does help a little bit when you look at their pace numbers and scoring. Atlanta's does tend to go. I mean, they were 10-7 to the over on 0 days rest last year, so.
And won this year, so 10-7 since last season.
Yeah, and the Sixers, like you said, I mean, they 4-0 on the road to the over. So there's definitely something there. Yeah, and the offense being faster when you get the ball in Maxey's hands more, when you let Tobias Harris be more of a factor and not just like a stand in the corner And yeah, I mean, Harden's going to drain your pace, especially if you're playing through both Harden and Embiid. That's why the Sixers for a while last year, I think we're playing at like a 92 pace, and one of the slowest teams out there. So I don't mind the over if you can get it a little bit lower, if you can kind of pounce on it if it does trend to go down. But this is an interesting schedule where it's a home and home set. Two nights later and on Saturday, they're going back to Philly to play again. And I just think these are the types of teams to just split at home. The Sixers last year were a little bit better away from home, but we saw in years prior, they were just like clockwork, losing on the road, then coming back at home. And look, Atlanta, it's just a case of when they have games circled. Like, I'm looking at kind of the angle with the other game too here. Portland, they knew they were in a back-to-back situation. They did not bring it against a feisty Jazz team necessarily. Got some key guys rest and got geared up for this game, which is the one they want to win. When they're engaged, I do worry that their defense is going to be good enough to slow down the Sixers and keep it under. And so that's why I shy away from the total. But I mean, when you have transcendent stars like Trae Young and Joel Embiid, the efficiency can go through the roof there, and you can get over. But yeah, I would look at Trae being the guy who sets the tone here. Maybe some player performance doubles for him to get 30, get a double-double, and lead the Hawks to a win in this situation.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a close game. I really do. I don't see a blowout for either team because I think they're both geared up for this one. I think it's almost like a pseudo live bet situation because we have this home at home where I think we're both like, I don't know exactly who's going to win this game, but I feel pretty good that whoever doesn't win is going to win the next one, right? And we can feel good about whoever we bet on, the previous loser in this next game as they play this home at home against each other. So, Nate, let's jump into those lines and then get into all things Pellies and Blazers.
Yeah, most teams are on a back-to-back here with the schedule adjusted, so we had no games on Tuesday. Then almost everyone played last night. Mavs -3.5 at the Wizards. Both teams on a back-to-back there, and the total's 208. Sixers are +1.5 at the Hawks. Total of 222. We do break that game down for you, talk about some angles. Hornets +11 at the Heat. And then this game, right now, Blazers are +6.5 at the Pelicans, gaining a little steam, opening at +7. Money line's +220, total 226. I'm going to steer away from a total just right off the bat when you have high efficiency scorers like Zion Williamson and potential blow-up candidates like Damian Lillard and Anthony Simons. It can go either way. I mean, Portland has not been playing over this season. They actually have the most turnovers per game and therefore the fewest field goal attempts. They're not playing with much pace either, but making up for it with good defense and clutch defense down the stretch. They're second in fourth quarter points per game allowed. And so you've seen them just be cover machines right now. 9-2 against the spread, 5-1 on the road. 3-1 on this road trip, the exception being after they beat the Suns. The Suns came back, beat them by 20 in a little quick revenge opportunity there. The last full Dame season, 2 years ago when he played, they were 24-15 against the spread on the road. Pretty much the same record straight up. 10-7 against the spread on back-to-backs. And they're in a better position on a back-to-back here because Yusuf Nurkic and Jeremy Grant both rested last night against the Hornets, who they clearly felt they could win that game without those guys. Not as important as they were going to be in this matchup against Joe Val and Zion Williamson. And so those injuries just kind of popped up late, and it's almost transparent load management, right? When you're just like, yeah, they're going to sit the front end here, and then they're going to be fresh for this one. And look, Joe Val had a very inefficient game the one time he faced Nurkic with the Pelicans. Nurkic has a 105 individual defensive rating this year. I mean, Jeremy Grant is not going to be a Zion stopper. Zion's going to do what he does here. For me, the key is, can you slow down CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram? And now that Josh Hart is on this side of the ball, on the Blazers, he's definitely a good candidate to put on CJ.
Dude, is your head spinning with this Dr. Revenge angle? Who do I take?
I guess, yeah, they swapped some guys, so we got familiar foes on each side. But the point is Dame, I mean, who isn't putting up huge numbers, but just as a leader, the way he seems to set the tone. I mean, he's the guy I credit for a lot of this early results for the Blazers, even though he's missed multiple weeks. But Simon stepping right in. I mean, they had a pretty soft schedule during those games he missed. But his last 4 against the Pelicans, Damian, 42 points per game with a 142 offensive rating. And they went 3-1 in those games. They won 3 straight. The last time they lost, well, kind of because Josh Hart was on the other side of the ball. Again, he was a plus 18. He went for 25 and 5. We gush about Mr. Hart on this program and what he brings on the wing. And when Dame was out, now you're seeing some of those young bench guys start to thrive. And in their last game, like I said, they basically rest Grant and Nurkic, and they had 35 bench points against the Hornets. And so that's extremely valuable to be able to carry that over against Pelicans, who have a strong bench unit, also some young guys there, Trey Murphy, Alvarado, who will come off in the bench and give you good effort. But I mean, with the Pelicans, you got to look at the points in the paint versus 3-point ratio, right? Yeah. That they just don't make threes. They're the worst 3-point shooting team, lowest percentage. Everything comes inside the arc. And the Blazers have been pretty good denying paint points on the road. They've been especially good during this road trip. They are one of the best teams limiting your 2-point shooting, mid-range shots. So again, CJ probably might not have a great game in this Dr. Revenge situation. I mean, it all amounts to just, I trust them to be able to keep this close enough. That the Pelicans have been kind of overvalued since their hot start, first couple games. They're 2-6 against the spread in their last 8, and they're 1-4 after a win this season against the spread. And last year, not a great record on back-to-backs. And with Zion, you have to worry about a back-to-back situation and just how his efficiency is going to be, or whether the Pelicans are going to rein him in at all, because his health is so tenuous. He played 31 minutes last night, and in his only back-to-back this season, he had his second worst offensive rating, and he had 7 turnovers in that game. He's been a big minus in terms of the plus-minus in their last 3 losses. And yeah, you got to question his ability to defend on that end as well. So short rest, I think I like the Blazers situation a lot more on short rest.
I think they're being undervalued overall this season, right? I think like you said, Dame really was sort of the reason at the beginning of the season that I think we all, weren't surprised that they were playing above what the expectations were, just dominating the against the spread record, like you said, already 9-2 on the season, on the road 5-1. So all of that is obviously because their ability to exceed expectations has been at the beginning of the season completely predicated on Dame's ability to lift them up, not necessarily carry them as other guys have been doing their part. But at the end of the day, right, like he's the superstar and the ceiling is wherever his ceiling is, right? That's the team ceiling. So the interesting part though is that then during his injury and before he came back last night, you look at their record against the spread. I believe they only failed to cover once, and that was because Phoenix was pissed that they beat them by 2 in overtime without Dame, and then came back and pounded them by 20 in the next game. That was their only game they failed to cover in that time frame. So that also speaks to not just what Dame is doing, but they finally got the right pieces around him, because what we've been saying since Dame and CJ, and really since Dame has been the man in Portland, and we realized that he was sort of stolen with whatever pick they got him at, it was like 8th or something ridiculous. Since that time, and since that's been the identity of this team, we've been waiting for them to be a good defensive team, and that's what they are. And you talked about a number of the stats that are important when you're playing the Pellies. Also, I want to be clear, neither of us think that there's a human being on the planet capable of stopping Zion, as good of a defender and long and tall as he might be in terms of Jeremy Grant, even somewhat stronger than he might seem with his wiry frame. there's not a human being really that's been built that can stay in front of Zion at this point consistently, right? So there's no such thing as a stopper, but if you're going to bother him and obviously just play off of him and allow him to shoot a lot more, Jeremy Grant's a guy that can close out and is able to give him more space to play off of him. Obviously, if he gets put into the paint, you worry about it, but with Nurk down there this season, with him being healthy, which is also what we've been speaking about for Dame since Nurkic got there from Denver, is can this man stay healthy? Because and can he stay on the floor without fouling? And that's what he's done this season, enough to allow them to be a lot better of a defense in the paint. There's at least respectable at this point in terms of being in the top 15 and defending the paint so far. Then in terms of limiting points in the second chance points, which is also what you worry about with this when you're playing the Pellies, also able to do all that stuff, right? So and I believe they're 7th right now in terms of limiting second chance points. Their defensive rebound percentage is finally not like 28th in the league. It's like top 15. So as long as you're a respectable team on defense, which their defensive rating is also in the top 10 this year, which is very, very respectable, then you're going to be able to win games if Dame Lillard is on your team, and then you have a 1B like Anthony Simons and the like. So I love the value of 7 and I think it's 7.5 at this point in some places that you can get. That spread, actually it's gone down on DraftKings, but I saw it in a couple spots also already at 7.5. So I'll take this game all the way down to like 5, to be honest with you. I'll take all those points for the Blazers, who have been plenty good on the road and who have shored up the areas where last year I would be like terrified, even if Dame was on this team last year, I would have been terrified to pick against the Pellies with Zion Williamson there, especially the way that the Blazers were playing defense and the way that the Pellies would get to the rim. But yeah, this year it's a little bit of a different story, and I feel right alongside what you were saying, Nurk and Jeremy Grant, weird scratches yesterday, specifically so that they could play in this game. Like, who were they worried about in yesterday's game? Terry Rozier going 6 for 20 from the field on Charlotte? There's nobody on that team right now, so it was a very good call by Chauncey Billups, who we may end up all owing an apology to, because he might be a good coach too. Come to shove this season, we find out.
Yeah, I mean, he's doing a great job so far. We love Mr. Big Shot on this program. Never really slandered him too much.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, the Pelicans, going back to their struggles, like what it took for them to get this win and to cover for the first time. I mean, they covered against the Warriors, who were on a back-to-back on the road and were just not competing.
Yeah.
To beat the Bulls last night, they had 36 free throw attempts, 13 offensive rebounds, and they needed Chicago to shoot 7 for 27 from 3, because that's the way they play, right? They pack it in. They allow the 6th most attempts from downtown, and Portland is not a team that you want to dare to shoot. And I mean, they got 2 of the best snipers in the league, and then guys who are spotting up, including Josh Hart.
Yep.
So I don't think that they're going to be able to pull away from this team unless Portland just goes absolutely ice cold. But down the stretch, like they're obviously a Damian Lillard led team. Like I said, 8th and 4th quarter scoring and 2nd and 4th quarter defense. So I think it's going to be at least close down the stretch. I don't mind a plus 220 for the Blazers to pull out the win. I think it's more of a toss up game that's incorrectly listed right now, because the Pelicans are just they're not blowing anybody away right now. I mean, aside from that opening game against Brooklyn, like they haven't been overly impressive. Yeah, I'm going to go with the 76er to target this Hawks defense, but it's not their 2 big guys. It's number 3 banana, Tobias Harris, who I think actually stands to benefit the most from James Harden being out. When Harden's in there, he's asked to just be a corner 3-point shooter and maybe the most expensive 3-and-D guy in the league. We know his skill set is a little more versatile than that, and he can get to the rim. He can get it going in the mid-range. He's had a lot of success against Atlanta, a team that gives up the most points per game to power forwards, also the 5th most rebounds per game to power forwards. So 16.5 is the points prop for Tobias, pretty low, and that's plus 100 at FanDuel. DraftKings bumped it down to 15.5 and made it minus 130. I mean, I think I'd be comfortable going up for 17 points. Without Harden, since 2021, he's averaging 19 points per game. He sees a spike in usage rate, 6% spike, along with another rebound and a half. And in 3 this season, since Harden's injury, 20 points per game, about 9 rebounds, almost 5 assists per game. So the PRA is in play. I like the points and rebounds, 23.5. The way the Hawks play at home with a ton of pace. And what he's done against the Hawks, like I mentioned, his last 18 points per game. So you're right there, 7.5 rebounds, 22% usage rate with Harden in or out of the lineup. But I just think the absence of Harden will result in a lot more reliable usage for Tobias.
Yeah, that all seems fair. I mean, I'm happy to take any of those dudes. When James Harden is out, really between Embiid, Maxey, and Tobias. I like what you're saying there. I do feel good about Embiid too, but talk about him in a minute as well. Not like we said, not a ton to choose from tonight, but there's a few here that we can get next to, including Terry Rozier taking on the Miami Heat. The idea behind him having a 21.5 point prop there on DK, I believe the idea behind that is there's nobody else on that team right now that you feel great about, with no LaMelo, no Cody Martin, and no Gordon Hayward at this point. I guess Kelly Oubre and Terry Rozier are doing most of the shooting. Last night, Terry Rozier put the ball up 20 times against the Blazers, which was 7 more than the next man on the squad, and failed to really went 1 of 7 from inside the arc, despite going 5 of 13 from deep, which is plenty good, right? Hitting 5 threes and shooting nearly 40%. Still didn't, wasn't able to get the 21.5 points he had on this prop. And the Miami Heat are, not the defense that they were last year at this point right now. Definitely some key guys missing time here and there. They obviously missed PJ Tucker and have not gelled fully defending the 3 as well as they did last season. Not shockingly, PJ Tucker helping Philly up their 3-point defense a ton this season. So it looks like he definitely has a massive impact on that. But with all that said, like there's no one on Charlotte right now that Miami needs to focus on outside of him. I think keep Kelly Oubre at bay in the event that he randomly has one of those games that he goes off. But mostly all eyes are going to be on Rozier, whose career against this team is just really, really bad. His last 4 versus Miami, we're talking 13 points a game. He's gotten 16 or less in all of those. In 9 career games at Miami. Obviously, some of this is skewed by when he was, as you say, a sort of a peont on the Celtics back in the day before he got out from under those shadows, and was a pretty good player on this team. But 9 career games in Miami, 7 points a game, less than 4 boards, less than 2 assists in all those games as well. So Miami's defense this year in terms of opposing point guards, still super good in top 10 and limiting them in points and assists. Actually give up a ton of rebounds to them, but I don't really even know what that's about. Still about 7 boards a game, which is the most against point guards, oddly enough. But it's really about the usage. Obviously, you think Terry's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. He's going to put up at least 20 shots again in this game. But even if he does, you still feel good about Miami's defense. You also feel good that this might be a blowout, and that Rozier might not need to be playing all of these minutes, continuing to chuck up shots if they're down by 20 plus by, say, the middle of the third quarter, right?
Yeah, the last 2 with the Hornets at Miami, you talk about his career, but they're still not good, and his plus minus is minus 19, and both of those games have been blowouts. So with the Hornets plus 11 here, I think you're kind of hedging against Charlotte being competitive in the fourth quarter. And then, you get him off the floor. His usage rate is going to be really high given the situation. So I think that's why we both saw plus 145 for 3 turnovers and said, ooh, give me that. Because we want to, in some way, bet on like a lot of field goal attempts and not a lot of makes, and just like a gross performance here in some ways. So I'm kind of interested in the over on turnovers and also kind of over on rebounds when you back that up with some numbers. I mean, the amount of playing time he's been getting, 5 rebounds is the prop, and I think he should be around there for sure. I was scared to add the peripheral stats here because I think it's mostly just going to be a poor shooting percentage, but he'll be out there doing everything else and playing 37 minutes if it's close, down the stretch.
If it's close, which it probably won't be. We should also mention the Miami forces the 3rd most amount of turnovers in the league. So yeah, feel pretty good about that.
Yeah. Look, I'm looking at a revenge angle here, Josh, but it is an under in that revenge spot. Kristaps Porzingis going up against the Mavericks, and he did get some numbers last year in his first chance to get revenge against Dallas. He went for 24, 9, and 4, which certainly gets him over this prop tonight at 33.5 PRA. But Second game of a back-to-back, third game in 4 nights for the Wiz. In his career on short rest, Porzingis under 19 points per game with his lowest usage rate in that situation. In his last 3, as the schedule has tightened up and as he's faced some pretty tough interior teams, 14 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, shooting 34% from the field, 25% from deep. And Dallas, I mean, for me, it's more just about how scared you are of Dallas defensively and how scared you are of the way they play in terms of pace. They're dead last in pace. So it's hard to take an over against them unless it's some sort of elite half-court scorer like Kevin Durant, for example. It just generally devolves into a low-scoring game. Like I said, the total is 208 in this game, and I still kind of want to take under the way Washington's been shut down. They were held to 86 in a matchup with the Nets recently. And Dallas allows the fewest three-pointers to centers as well, fewest rebounds per game to centers, second fewest points per game. They have more bulk now. Christian Wood, Josh Green is playing a nice role there at the 4. So I don't think Porzingis is going to be able to just assert his will because he wants some revenge here. I think he goes under with the PRA, and under 21.5 points. I don't hate that either, but I think you can trust him to struggle with the peripheral stats as well and kind of take that round number.
Yeah, I'm happy to go under when you talk about down low against the Mavs. Seawood's out. He's not actually traveling with the team on this little 2-game trip. They definitely could have used him against all of the 7-footers that play on Orlando last night, who also didn't have Paolo, still won that game. Shout out this show for calling that. But I still feel good about it, even without Seawood. It's not like he's an all-world defender by any means. He's a great rebounder, which hurts you. But, I mean, he's also playing a lot of that second unit, right, ball. So it's not necessarily like he would be matched up on Kristaps too often. But, yeah, I'm with you on it. So, yeah, I'll go under there and then finish with hypothetical overs. I mean, Embiid has his props up. It's 28.5 points. It's a lot of points. You can find that on a couple spots. It's a lot of points. I'm not too worried about it at 28.5 right now, just because of what he's done there as of late, right? If you look at the last, let's say, 5 versus Atlanta on the road, we talked about that in the game video. 27 points, slightly under it, 12 boards, 3 assists. The rebounding prop as well, I believe for him still sat, it was 10.5, which I like because I said at 11.5 I would consider it. At 10.5, I'd probably take that. The points, there's a discrepancy here, right? If you watch that game video, little spoiler, there's a little bit of a discrepancy between Nate and I. I think there's points. There's reasons to believe there's points. If you look at the history between these two teams, there's reasons to think there aren't going to be points. I do think this year's teams are different enough from the matchups that these two teams have played in the past that this game should be higher than the less than 100 points scored by one team in pretty much every matchup over the last 7 times they've played. I think both teams get closer to that 110, 111 mark so that we can get an over at 220. And then you feel good about both. Embiid at 28.5 points with a faster pace. I like the 10.5 boards for sure. I even might like that a little bit more, the 10.5 rebounds, than I like the points, to be honest, because I always get a little bit nervous at 28.5 points from anyone who's not named Shai Gilgeous-Alexander this season, or Luka, I guess. But either way, for the boards for him, the points for Trey, which is something that you and I are still waiting on here that we're not able to see. We've got a bunch more 76ers props up right now that we're seeing than those Hawks props. But let's say Trey gets the same 28.5, 27.5. I actually like his points a little bit more than I like Embiid's points tonight. He actually gets to the free throw line a bit more in these matchups than Embiid. It's like 9.4 a game for Embiid, 9.7 for Trey in these last 3 matchups between these teams or so during the regular season. So I think there's opportunity for both teams to score a lot, to keep that pace high, to get a lot of boards for Embiid, to get a lot of points for Trey, and feel good about potentially an over at 220 in this one.
Yeah, I think if you want to take Embiid at 20.5, take him 30 points in the win. I'm not the biggest fan, as we say in the game video, though, of the Sixers winning this game, but plus 270 right now for Embiid to get 30 in the win. I don't really see a path to victory for the Sixers without Embiid having a nice 30-point game here. And the double-double is around plus 200. That does seem very reliable in terms of getting 10 boards as well. So, yeah, I'm still waiting to see what Trey has in store, but I would imagine he's a pretty good bet to get 30 points here as well. And so I'll be interested in his props when they come out.
Definitely. That's what he's averaging against this team at home in 6 career matchups. So since he's come into the league, he's averaging 30 a game at home against his team. Loves coming out against the 76ers, as we saw when he knocked them out of the playoffs a little while ago. But that is all the time we have for you guys in this one. Continue to follow along with us, like and subscribe to that page. We will be bringing you these videos. As you can see, being on vacation will not stop us. We will see you tomorrow. So until we see you then, happy betting.